All right, we're gonna see what is growth flow engineering, right? So growth in general means anything that's increasing in size, be it a plant, right? Be it an animal, okay? Be it a human being. Anything that increases in size or an organization, which could be a business in our case. So we're not focused on plants, we're not focused on animals, we're not focused on human growth, we are focused on our organizational growth. Now, this could mean multiple things, your employee count could go up, or your revenues could go up. Again, you're not focused on this, you're focused on revenues. So by growth, we mean top line or revenues, which you get by selling your goods and services. Okay, now that is clear. Let's look at what are all the different business functions that lead to top line or revenue growth. So, three things are here: sales, marketing, and finance. Now, you could ask, hey, what about strategy, right? Now, strategy is not an independent variable, it's a dependent variable on all these things. It cuts across sales, marketing, finance also. I mean, of course, there are operations related to executing a project, customer service, all those things, but we are not going to look into that. Again, we said sales, marketing, finance, which directly affects top line, and strategy cuts across all these things because there'll be sales strategy, marketing strategy, finance strategy, which means it translates to sales ops, marketing ops, and finance ops. Strategy translated to action would lead to ops, right? And then that will lead to an output. And the output in our case is revenue growth, okay? So just to be clear, growth flow engineering, we're just talking about growth. It's talking about top line or revenue growth of an organization, which involves sales, marketing, and finance. There'll be strategy, which will cut across all these three things. All these strategies should convert into action, which will happen only through operations, and it will lead to an output, okay? Now, the rate at which we execute these operations is where the next two things come in: flow engineering, okay? So think about flow. Again, flow and engineering are two terms. We'll break down each of these things. Flow could mean a lot of things, there is, like in physics or mathematics, it could involve flow of fluids. In system dynamics, it could mean there is a stock and there is a flow. Yeah, like several different things are there. Similarly, engineering is using the most optimal resources, which involves time, people, etc., to arrive at a solution. Okay. How are we combining these two things, right? Even from physics standpoint, for flow to happen in a seamless way, if there are frictions, right? Frictions reduce flow across, whether it's physics, whether it's engineering. If you want to increase the acceleration, all you're doing is reducing the friction of conversion of energy from, let's say, electrical energy to mechanical energy, or mechanical energy to mechanical energy itself. Anyway, so, but when we combine these two things, if you're able to engineer the flow using AI, in the parlance of AI, you must have heard of prompt engineering, right? So what is prompt engineering? Prompt engineering is giving a specific instruction to an AI model, okay? Llama, OpenAI, GPT-4, 3, whatever this, right? Any of this model, you give a specific instruction to get the desired output. Okay. For example, if you open up ChatGPT and say, hey, one way would be, this is my resume. Let's say you upload your resume and you say, hey, this is my resume, make it better. Okay. Now, obviously, it'll give some output. Okay. But where does engineering comes in, or prompt engineering comes in, is when you give a role to this, you say, hey, you are the best resume writer. And you have inputted your resume and you set a goal for it. Goal, make it stand out. Okay. Now for this, obviously the output will be better. Okay. Now, obviously there are different ways. There's chain of thought. A lot of different ways of prompt engineering is there. In chain of thought, you will continue talking to it, right? Now the fourth one, let's call it chain of thought. Okay. So I'll say, you give it the role first. Do you get it? And then it'll say, yes. The output will be, yes, I'm the best writer, best resume writer. Okay. And then you'll say, okay, here's my resume, like that. No, if you can give it in step by step, chain of thought, it'll give better responses. Okay. And the fourth, an interesting way, which is all happening right now, is you can also bribe AI, okay, emotionally and monetarily. So let's say emotional / financial, right? So say, again, you give the same role, best career guide / resume writer. If I don't get a job in the next 30 days, my family will starve to death. Depends on how you want to increase the stakes. Okay. And you can also add to this, say, if I get a job, I'll give you 10% of my CTC, right? Cost to company or salary, whatever you want to call it, right? So in all these ways, ideally, the output for 4, which is this emotional and financial manipulation, would be better than 3, would be better than 2, would be better than 1. Okay, so this is all, we're still talking about prompt engineering. Okay, if you want to get the best output from any AI model, you engineer the prompt to it. Okay, now going back to what we were talking with respect to flow engineering, right? So now this is, we're combining both flow and engineering, right? Okay, so let's take an example. Okay, you are a founder, you are listening to a podcast, and obviously your brain is always trying to connect. That's the brain. Okay, shitty drawer. The brain is trying to connect every information that's coming into your head to the startup that you're building. Okay, you could be a founder or a VC who's thinking about your portfolio companies. Haha, yeah, that's right. Okay, all the time, let's say. Okay, or you are a very diligent brand manager and your mind is always thinking about the brand that you're managing. Okay. I'm just giving an example. Someone who is always thinking about what you're doing, any input that comes to you, listening to podcasts, reading a blog, watching a YouTube video, input could be anything, text, image, video, audio, moving images, which is GIFs, whatever. So you try to connect it and then suddenly, boom, right? Some light bulbs goes off. Okay. Then you're like, man, if this info combined through my brain, combine it with my brand, there is a new content or an idea. We're just talking purely from content standpoint. A lot could happen. You could think of a financial strategy, pricing strategy, whatever it is, but let's just say a new blog post or content comes into your head. Now, what do? Here's where the fun is, okay? So 90% of the time, we forget it. Like, that just came, you're like, okay, now I'll go to my office, I'll talk to my team, but we'll forget it. 5% of the time, let's say, what's something? 5% of the time, you immediately record an audio, you send it to yourself on WhatsApp or your team WhatsApp, or you put it on Slack, whatever, somewhere you're capturing it, or you open Roam Research or Notion, somewhere you're capturing it. Okay, you've captured it. And the other 5%, you would still remember it. You would put some structure to it. And then you email or in your daily meetings, daily stand-up, let's say, you share it with your team. Okay. I'm just giving some examples. The numbers could vary. It could be 95, 2.5, 2.5, who knows, right? But each person is different. Sometimes you are capturing, let's say, 100% of the time. Who knows? Anyway, what happens after that is important. So some idea strikes you while you're listening to some content, and then you want to put out a content, right? So the team meeting happens. Multiple people are there, a brand manager, your content writer, your designer, your social media manager, I don't know, analytics person. And I'm just talking about marketing team meeting over here. Okay. You share it with them during the meeting, and then it goes through a cycle, right? And anywhere it could take 3 days to 30 days to put out this content. Again, could be way more efficient. That's what we are trying to arrive at, right? Depending on number of people involved, number of processes involved, all these things are bottleneck. This is where flow engineering comes in, right? So if you like really map out this thing, like, okay, I gave the idea to this person, idea went to a brand manager agreed, and it went to a content writer to designer to social media manager, right? And then let's assume there is an approval process here. Again, goes to brand manager, comes back, and brand manager could give it to the founder. See, these are all the bottlenecks that we are talking about, right? For big brands, maybe it's all needed. Maybe all these people are needed, but we never know. The point is, can we do it faster, right? And then it gets posted on social media, okay? Now imagine, instead of all these things, which takes 3 to 30 days, you open up your custom GPT, which already knows what your brand is, who your target customer is, what are your brand colors, okay, and your fonts, what's the size, basically your brand guidelines, let's say. It knows all these things, okay? And you just start talking to it. As soon as you listen to this podcast, you interact with it, and then you ideate right there, okay? Ideate, and it immediately generates, let's say, LinkedIn post, Twitter tweet, EAT, how are people calling it now? Instagram, TikTok, whatever, right? So all these are text captions we are talking about. Does that. And then you ideate again over there, DALL-E 3 is there. It generates an image. Okay, you don't like it, you talk to it again, generates better image. And then through a webhook, it connects to make.com or Zapier or Gumloop or Flowise, anything. These are called the glues of the internet, right? And then it stores in your content engine, or we call it external storytelling engine. And let's say there is one approval process and post. Okay, all this can happen within 30 minutes if you're the only person involved in this whole thing. Okay, right from the idea that comes into your head, talking to your custom GPT, generating an image. Obviously, there are ways we can also create videos also. Okay, like stock videos kind of a thing. Let's say slideshows of sorts with transition between these things, so it looks like a video. And then it connects, it stores in your system. If you want an approval process, set an approval process, but this is important, store it anyway. Immediately, you can also say, I don't need an approval, just post it right away. You can post it, or you go back and think and post it. Okay, so this is a flow engineering, right? So I think we have talked about all these three things. We talked about what is growth. We talked about what is flow. We talked about what is engineering. Okay. At growth flow engineering, what we are trying to do is maximize the number of growth experiments that you can run for your brand, be it sales related experiments, be it marketing related experiments, or your finance related experiments. Okay. The more number of experiments you run, the better data you will have, and you can do an informed decision. Conduct an informed decision making, right? Now, this will lead to revenue growth, and this can remove all the bottlenecks in terms of executing growth ops. So that's why we say, at growth flow engineering, we engineer, right? So we look at your existing processes and then we optimize where human intervention is needed, where it's not needed. We engineer your sales, marketing, and finance, which we know by now. These are all called growth operations. For what? For revenue growth. So that's growth flow engineering. Check us out. Let us know if we can help you engineer your growth. Thank you.